I was very attracted to my wife because she had those traditional Christian values. So I pursued her. She let me know, hey, we can't let my mom know. I can't let my friends know because I'm a Jehovah's Witness. I'm like, Jehovah's Witness? You mean the people that knock on your door on Saturday morning?
You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
My name is Jonathan. I'm married to a Jehovah's Witness for 16 and a half years, but we've been together since 2001. So it's been about 18 years since we've been together, and we have 4 children. We have 1 girl, and then we have 3 sons. I'm originally from California. I moved to Florida in the year 2000, and all my family's still out on the West Coast. My wife, she's from here, so all her family's here. You know, my situation was a little unique in the sense that, like most people that get drawn into the witness theology and convert to that, usually they're individuals who are already Christians with some other type of Christendom, whether they're Catholic, Protestant, things like that, but they were estranged from it. And I was raised Catholic, but when I met my wife, I wasn't involved in Catholicism. I wasn't going to church. You know, I was baptized Catholic. I had gone through certain sacraments that Catholics go through, but I was never involved in that, you know. And when I left home, I got away from that. So I was so used to meeting people, and I would say, like, in the witness way, I'll use witness terminology when I describe that. I was involved with so many worldly people, you know, and when I met my wife, it was very refreshing because I met someone who told me that she read the Bible a lot and she was in Bible values. And me okay, I'm a Catholic. I consider myself Christian. Yeah, that sounds like how I was raised. So I'm like, okay. And so I come from traditional parents, so I was very attracted to my wife because she had those traditional values, those traditional Christian values. So I pursued her, and as I pursued her, she let me know, hey, we can't let my mom know, I can't let my friends know because I'm a Jehovah's Witness. I'm like, Jehovah's Witness? You mean the people that knock on your door on Saturday morning? I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, hey, I don't know anything about them, but I take your word for it. If you say you're Christian, okay, cool, no problem. You know, and I'm just that I'm a live and let live person. So I don't judge you. I would never judge my wife. And I was like, I was 21 at the time. I'm a guy, and my wife was just smoking hot. So I mean, honestly, my wife could have been like, she could have told me anything, and I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm cool with it. But you know, as time progressed, you know, it got more interesting because when she was meeting with me, she wasn't supposed to be because I was a worldly person, and she was getting threatened with being disfellowshipped when her mother found out because her mother told the elders and things like that. And I started to study to kind of prevent that because they said, hey, look, and if you're studying, and that's okay, you can be friends with Shara as long as it's chaperoned and things like that. Nothing like that seemed out of the ordinary to me. I get it. And it really became when I started studying, because I'll be honest with you, I was so in love with my wife, I would have done anything for her. And they're like, oh, we'll just study with these people. Oh, that's easy, you know? And when I started studying with the witnesses, I started studying with one of the head elders and his son. And there were just certain things, like they prompted me to start studying on my own too. And I started revisiting my faith and what I was raised with. And that's where the two started to butt heads. Like that's where the end kind of came. And essentially there were some questions that they couldn't answer for me. And that studying session ended.
What kind of questions are we talking about?
Well, questions like, you know, when I started studying the history of Jehovah's Witnesses, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the history, they stemmed from the Millerite movement. It was an end times movement. It came with Charles Taz Russell, and that's like the end of the 19th century, early 20th century. And so my one of the big questions for me is like, well, wait a minute. I thought Jesus was born. I thought Christianity started with Jesus, when Jesus was walking around. So where was the truth from that time to all the way to Charles Taze Russell? You know, and so I'm just talking basic common sense. Okay, well, listen, if I believe in this Christianity thing, and you want me to believe in the Jehovah's Witness Christianity version, well, explain to me, like, what happened during all this time? Like, where did the Bible come from? Because it didn't just float on down from a cloud. Like, it was penned by human beings. So there's just certain questions. It just didn't really add up to me, and there's questions that he just couldn't answer, and he kept directing me to find those answers, like the ones that he couldn't answer. Hey, go research the Watchtower, research directly from the Watchtower source. And I just kept coming back to him with the same question, like, and it got to a point where, hey, listen, if you're just not going to accept this answer without your question, then there's nothing I can do for you. And it's funny because that right there reminds me of the quote that you have on your YouTube page. And the quote is, I would rather have a question that can't be answered than an answer that can't be questioned. And that's kind of how, I mean, it's funny. I saw that quote on your page, and it brought me right back to where I was in that, that time. So when I did that, they threatened my wife, hey, you have to break it off with him. They were very against us being together because I was not a witness. And, in the Bible, it talks about being unequally yoked and such things like that. But even after that pressure, we still pursued our relationship. So she got disfellowshipped because of physical intimacy outside of the realm of being married, and my wife got pregnant. But even after that, we got married. We did get married after that, and it took her about a year to get back in the congregation after being disfellowshipped. And she had to do, she went to the meetings. She sat in her little special disfellowship section. She didn't talk to anybody. She still had to go through and jump through those hoops. And I remember that. But even after that point, even when I stopped studying, and she got disfellowship, there was still a lot of pressure even on her after that, because she would come to me and tell me what they were telling her, and they told me, listen, just because you get married, just because you have a child with somebody, you don't have to be with them. You can still raise your child. And if that person wants to get baptized and that person wants to become a witness, they can do that. But they were still giving her pressure to leave me, to basically be a single parent. And there was a lot of conversations we had. We were young. We were very young. I mean, we were in our early 20s. But my parents are traditional, and I always told her, based on what my parents, when they were together, for me, I just wasn't the average. You look at the statistics today, your average guy, he gets a girl pregnant, he's gone. You don't want the responsibility. And she wasn't going to chase me down. Like, she wasn't going to chase me down for the responsibility. I could have just ran off. But I was like, no, I love you. That's my child. And that's just how traditional I am. That's my responsibility. I want to be a father to my child. So, and, that, I think that reciprocated. Like, my attitude with her kind of reciprocated and powered her through the pressure she was getting, And I think just from the beginning, her and I together, and the way we committed to each other kind of just pushed us through all that. I think that's why I'm sitting here talking to you today. I mean, we've been together for 16 and a half years. But for those of you that, have met a Jehovah's Witness, and you're not a witness, and you're not going to become a witness, there are certain hurdles that you have to go through. But the most important thing at the end of the day, relationships come down to, if you're going to get married and you're going to have children, it stops being about you. It becomes those children. And you have to ask yourself these questions. And when I was with my wife and when we were going through that, I never had someone tell me or someone give me say, hey, slow down a little bit. Are you sure you want to date this person? Because this is this person's values. And these are the things about the Jehovah's Witness theology that will affect your children in a way that you may think is negative. That comes down to like blood transfusions. It comes down to things about going to college and seeking advanced education. Certain things that are I wouldn't say it's totally discredited, maybe. Again, I'm using lighter language. I was never a witness. I never was raised in that, but I know it's discouraged. I know going out and getting your bachelor's degree and becoming educated and getting a good job can be discouraged in favor of, hey, stop wasting all your time in college and university. You need to be out going door to door and being a pioneer. And the reason I have a niece that's going through that same thing right now. And every time I see her, I love her to death. I tell her, she wants to go to Bethel. And I say, you need to go to college. You are 18. You just graduated high school. Go to college. Get a degree. Get something you always fall back on. But don't do that now. And these are those questions that you're going to have. If you have children with someone who's a Jehovah's Witness and you get married, you're going to have those conversations. You're going to have those arguments. You're going to have those battles. And, there's certain things that my wife and I, we still like talk about, things like school and college. My children, they play sports, they compete, and my daughter wants to go to college. And I'm so thankful for that. And my wife doesn't oppose that overtly with them. And I think she supports what I want for them, because my wife was discouraged from doing that. Even to the point where she said, I'm leaving high school. She left actual high school to do homeschool high school. And she didn't get a high school diploma. She got a GED. So I think, and now that we're our age now, she knows deep down in her heart how that affected her and how that kind of drew her back. Like she could be somewhere a little bit more better if she would have went into college after high school and got a degree. She could be doing something that she really enjoys right now, where she doesn't have the qualifications to do that. We only have one daughter, and she's our oldest, and she looks just like my wife. And when my wife sees her, she sees herself, and she encourages her to do more, to go to school. Now she won't articulate, she won't tell you that, she won't explain that to you, but I can see it. I can see those things in my wife and how she treats her daughter. She doesn't hold her back. She wants my daughter to go out in the world and succeed and to be the best she can be. That's not what you get in the congregation. That's not what you're told. So there's certain things, when it comes down to it, if you are dating someone who is a witness, you have to ask yourself these questions. Do you love that person so much that you want to marry them and have children with them and have those battles with them for the sake of how deep your love is for that person? And that's all I could really say to it. I would never tell anybody that don't talk to this person, or don't, love is its own thing, and I would never say don't do this or don't do that, but ask yourself the question, how deep do you want to go? And that's all I can say. My wife and I, we've been through a lot of arguments, and we've been through a lot of heartaches. I know I've been through a lot of heartaches. Even every time that my wife had a child and I was in the hospital, I had to deal with the freaking people from the congregation coming down to the hospital, who wanted to try to put guilt on my wife, make sure she signs the no blood thing. And I had to battle against that. It's just a lot of things. And
how'd you handle that?
Well, the first time I didn't know what was going on. I just saw two guys in suits and we shook hands, and I didn't know what was going on behind the scenes, because and I was even there, and my wife got to talk to them, and because she gave them permission, the hospital permission for them to come in. And so I was like, oh, and I was like, okay, then I learned what that was all about. I didn't know anything about the blood transfusions at that time. And so I was like, oh, really? Okay. So the second time, our second child, that was about 2 years later, I knew. And they came up and I just said, hey guys, you know what? No, just we're good. Thanks for coming by. Shook their hands. They left. And the third time I had changed professions and I was working in law enforcement at the time. And they came again. And I said, hey, see you later. Thanks for coming by. Shook hands. Just to be nice. That way they don't go back and talk like, oh, maybe, I don't want them to say anything bad about her. I just, rumors get spread. But my wife, then I finally realized she was signing paperwork with the doctors about if I need blood, that I can only get plasma and I can't get I can't get blood. And the third time I took the surgeon aside and I said, and even the hospital doctors and the nurses, I took them aside out of the room and I said, I know my wife signed this paperwork, but I don't care. If she needs blood, she's going to get blood. If she needs blood to save her life, we're going to save her life. Because here's the thing is this, there's some legality there, but all those medical staff people are on my side. They're like looking at her like she's crazy. They're all on my side. So it's just all pressure from the congregation. But again, is that something that you want to go through? Do you want to go through that? Those are questions you have to ask yourself. I had to learn that. It wasn't something I could ask myself. I had to figure that out and learn that, And when I got into law enforcement, part of that profession was you're here to help people. You're here to save lives if that happens. On our fourth child, I had given CPR to people, and there was no way that I'm going to be in the hospital. My wife needs blood. I'm not saving my wife's life, So yeah, it gets testy. I'm an intense person. And my wife and I, we've been together for, 16 and a half years and we have 4 kids. And I don't know, back then I was a dumb kid, and I was in love. we watch movies about this stuff, it's like, I'll never do that. And you live in your life and you do the same thing, but my wife, her and her mom were never like super serious, like hardline witnesses. And when I say that is, it's in their heart because that's what they're used to. But when it comes to the intellectual dogma of that theology, they don't go door to door on Saturdays. They don't. And one of the and I've challenged my wife on this. And one of the excuses is, well, my mom, she has social anxieties. She can't bring herself to knock on the door. So they give her the excuse that, hey, you can just place magazines. So to me, they claim, oh, we don't go door to door, but we place magazines. I'm like, okay. So, I was like, okay, whatever. But the more years progress, I've never known them ever. Not even my wife for over, 16. They've never gone door to door. They don't knock on doors. And I'm thinking like, isn't that like the number one thing you're supposed to be doing? Like that is the number one thing. And now the excuse is, well, you got kids. If you talk to your kids about Jesus at home, that counts. And I'm thinking, I almost didn't believe it. I was like, no, because then everyone would be doing that. Almost everyone's got kids. Everyone would be like, they'd be clocking their hours just talking at home to their kids. That can't be. Can't be. And again, I think it's one of those things where they give them the extra excuse, like my wife and they give them the extra excuse because they know people or they're close to higher elders. Until one of the elders from our congregation that she's going to now came over because they're really worried that she's going to leave. Like she's on her way out. And so they keep coming by and, she's sitting on the couch talking to them. It was a shepherding call. That's what it was. They came by a couple times and do a shepherding call because she doesn't go. She does not go to meetings. And sometimes she'll log on and listen on the audio, the live audio. Sometimes she listens, sometimes she doesn't. She just has it on there. So I guess they can see that she logged on. Again, it's a total scam, even the way they do it, because they're trying to avoid the pressure of like, you should be doing more. You should be going door to door. Well, I can't go door to door. I preach to my kids. Okay, well, that counts. Because they just want their little hours cards filled out so they can report.
When you guys first got married, was she going to the meetings a lot then, or was she always kind of like just didn't go?
Yes, she was always going with her mom, and she had her best friend who was the daughter of one of the held elders. So she was always going. She was going to all of them. And then when she got disfellowshipped, she was going to just Sundays. That's it. She wasn't in field service, and she wasn't doing theocratic ministry school. So she wasn't doing her weekday meeting and weekday evening. She wasn't doing a study. She was just doing the Sunday meeting as a disfellowshipped member. That was it. And but she was still doing it to show up so she could submit her letter as soon as possible to get back in. But she doesn't even go to meetings now. She'll log on here and there, just to show that she's logging on and trying to listen. And then my niece, she tries to fulfill her little hours by talking to my son and my daughter. But I kind of, I won't say interrupted. Well, I did interrupt that because I told my niece, like, if you want to talk to them about it, then you got to talk to me about what I want to talk about. It's a two-way street. And if you're not willing to talk to me about what I want to talk about, then, anyway.
There's a lot of people that we talk to that are having issues with their mates. And just like yourself, they still believe this is the truth.
Correct.
Some of them may go to meetings, they may hit and miss, but they still have that core belief.
Correct.
They may not be doing all the field service and all the studying and all that. So how can you talk to people that's having those issues?
That's a tough one, because that's one that I still even work on. And I'll even say that from my personal experience. I was raised Catholic. So if someone was to really try to pin me down and say, what do you believe? Like, what do you think that's out there? I still naturally, in a biased way, because that's my upbringing, that's my roots. I mean, I was like a little baby, being raised into it. And that's my safe space. I hate to use that term, but that's kind of like my safe space. That area kind of makes sense to me. It's a very, very difficult thing for a human being to take what they were raised in and just discard it, because it feels like you're alienating yourself and you're out there by yourself. You're out there alone. And I would describe me personally about what I believe is I'm a theist. I believe that there's a creator God. I don't believe we're here just by happenstance. And I'm not an atheist. I'm not a deist. And I believe that there was a powerful mind, a supernatural being that's outside of nature that created everything that we know. And a lot of that's based on, I believe that there's objective morality. I believe there is right and wrong. It's not subjective. Killing everywhere is wrong. Stealing everywhere should be wrong. But I just, I start from there. And starting from there, there's a lot of things I think successfully that Christianity is probably the best theological philosophy that is available today. Just like anything in this earth or that men has created, there's good and there's bad. If you discard the bad and keep the good, I think for the most part, Christianity is probably the way to go. Love thy neighbor, turn the cheek, certain things, the 10 Commandments. There's a lot of basis there for a good, successful living.
Well, other religions that are not Christians also believe in that theory as well.
Yeah. I just look at the history of human beings, and Western philosophy, Western culture
Mm-hmm.
has probably been the most successful that I've seen in human history, and a lot of that is to credit is Christendom. It really is. It's the beginnings of Christendom in Europe, and so and that's that's a whole other conversation. But
But I like what you said about when I first asked you the question. I like what
yeah,
you said when you stated that people have a hard time throwing away what they were taught from when they were kids.
correct.
That's what I think the issue is with these Jehovah's Witnesses, that they're not going to meetings, they're not all in it. And there's a lot of witnesses like that. There's a lot
Yeah,
of witnesses that just go for the social aspect. They don't want to lose their friends. And this is what they've been taught.
that's
They have a
100%
hard time.
correct.
Yeah.
You are 100% correct about that, because most people choose the easy path, right? And they may not necessarily deep down like, oh, am I really signing on to that? But they're involved. They're there. That's their family. That's their friends. And they're not going to make waves, so to speak. And so they'll just live it out. They'll just cruise on through. And then there's some people that are like, me, I got to take a personal stand. There's different levels of that, right? Some people are like, no, if I don't believe it, I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to act fake. And then there's some people that, hey, their family's involved and they're going to fake it out and they're just going to choose the path of least resistance. And there is a huge difference between what people say they believe and then how people act. And my wife's just she doesn't act like a hardliner witness. Our family is a worldly family. My kids play sports. My kids are motivated to go to college. My kids, you understand, like it's not a witness family. Now my wife will still go to meetings and she'll still tell everyone she believes that this is the truth. But when the rubber meets the road, and that's why I believe deep down in her heart that she is moving in that direction. It's just there's gonna have to be something that triggers the break, and all I can do is just be there to support her, be there to tell her it's okay. And I always thought that this was the truth, and I don't necessarily know now. It's okay. It's okay to not know something. It's okay.
What about holidays? How do you guys handle holidays in your family?
Oh, in the beginning, she was like, heck no. But over the years, we came up with a compromise where I never really did Halloween, but like Easter, Valentine's Day, things like that, we kind of just alternated years. There were some years we did Christmas, sometimes we didn't. And it just turned into kind of an every other year. We kind of made trade-offs. If we didn't do Christmas, we definitely did Thanksgiving. Like we had Thanksgiving. Because my mother-in-law, my wife, they love to eat. Thanksgiving is like the best time to eat. So they weren't super like against Thanksgiving,
But you can hide Thanksgiving though, because
Yeah.
you don't have to put up a tree or all the little decorations, you know.
True. But the thing is, my wife can always just blame me. If there's a Christmas tree in my house and lights up in my house, my wife just says, "Well, my husband's not a witness." She could just blame it on me, which is fine. I'll be the bad guy. you know. But my kids love it. My kids love Christmas. We did the Elf on the Shelf things for like the last couple years. And they know Santa's not real anymore. They're old enough now, but I still do Santa stuff. I still like Santa's gonna be, he's not gonna. They're like, Dad, stop. Santa's not real, and but I still do it, and they love it. They love the tree. They love lights. So again, it's just our kids are ending up. They're just choosing for themselves. But my daughter now, she comes to me and she's like, I hear this. She's starting to think for herself. She tells me, it's like, it doesn't really sound like it makes a lot of sense. I said, you know what? And this thing is, my wife still believes it, and I don't attack. And that's the thing. I don't attack witnesses on a personal level. I just say, hey, listen, for the most part, people just want to do the right thing, and a lot of witnesses think they're doing the right thing, and that's okay. But there's some things about it that you just got to kind of discard. There's good aspects of it, and just like again, back to what I said before, most human inventions, There's good aspects and there's bad. Some have more bad than good. Some have more good than bad. There's good things about witness theology. There is good things about it. There is a lot of bad too, and there is a culture of control involved with it. And that is a huge negative. And that's why you need to stay away from it, you know? And it's a human invention. It's a human invention. It wasn't invented by God. It wasn't invented by anything supernatural. No one came down from the heavens and gave Charles Taz Russell this knowledge, because the witness religion today is not the witness religion of Charles Taz Russell. It's completely different. They've contradicted themselves numerous times throughout history. They believed certain things and they didn't believe it, then they believed it again and they didn't believe it. And you have to take what's good out of anything and discard the bad. So I tell my daughter, I said, listen, certain things like telling the truth, not stealing, you just go down with the 10 Commandments as a basic and say, listen, those are good things. But when they start telling you, like, don't do blood transfusions and, you know, uh, shun your family because they don't believe what you believe anymore. Those are the negatives, and just put those aside, discard that. But there are a lot of good people who are caught up in it, and their intentions are well, you know. But what's that quote that says, "The road to hell is paved with good intentions." You can have all the good intentions in the world, but you have to do what's right. So that's what I press upon my children, because if I start really hammering Jehovah's Witnesses, what it turns into is my kids, they don't hear that anymore. What they hear is me hammering on their mother. And that's what I don't want. Like, my wife and I, we are, to our children, we are together. We are on the same team. Yeah, we have disagreements. Everybody does. And my children even know we have certain disagreements. But at the same time, my wife's a good person, and it's funny because my kids, they have good sense. They even come to me sometimes and say, we learned this, and it's like, that doesn't sound right. And I said, hey, good job, because I don't agree with that either.
Do the kids, do they go to the meetings with your wife, or?
Well, my wife doesn't go. She's not going. But in a rare, in maybe like once a month or once every 2 months, she might go to a meeting. And the last time she went was a month ago. My younger two sons went with her, but my older two children didn't. So my fourth and fifth grader went with her, but the older two didn't. I would never tell my wife that she couldn't take them there, because if I chose to take my kids to Catholic church, I wouldn't want her telling me I wouldn't be allowed to. So at the end of the day, I treat my wife the way I expect her to treat me. But that's not the end of it. Like, the cool thing is I can go over the Watchtower and I can read the Watchtower and I can tell them, hey, this is what sounds good and this is what's kind of like, cultish. But, with kids in general, your kids are going to get that in the real world. You can teach your kids at home, hey, the right and wrong and this and that. And when they go out in the world, they're going to go to school, they're going to go to college, and they're going to have some professor that could teach them anything they want, It happens. That's what's happening in colleges these days. Kids go off, they go to college, and you get some professor who's, whatever. On a political level, you might have some professor who's extremely left wing, and you're a conservative family. And your child is learning left wing things. They're learning about socialism and communism. You, to a certain extent, you can't. That's just something you can't control. But I've spoken to my kids enough, and I continuously try to speak to them. I speak philosophy with them. I speak theology. I speak about science. Science to me is very, very important. And the reason why I think there was a creator God was because for scientific reasons. And I explain those things to my children. And I think it gets them thinking. And they'll come to me sometimes and say, this doesn't sound right. And I said, because, trust your instincts. You're a smart person. Read, learn about science, because religion is not unscientific. Now, there are religious beliefs that are unscientific, but for the most part, religion's not an unscientific thing. I think for the most part, that there's a lot of science out there that does support supernaturalism. I don't think it's going to ruin my children or anything. Like, my kids are going to college. They're going to get degrees. I'm going to make sure that they believe in that. My daughter loves playing softball. She's highly competitive. My sons play basketball, baseball. They're highly competitive. They understand the value of competing and trying to win and things like that. And so, I mean, yeah, I don't like the fact that they go, but that's something you got to live with. That's another thing you need to consider if you're down the road when it comes to your kids. If your wife or your significant other is a witness and you're with them, they're gonna take your kids to those meetings if they choose to. You can't give them ultimatums not to, because then that's just gonna lead. I mean, it's gonna end up leading into divorce. Because those are the basics. If I want to take my kid to church, I'm not gonna be cool with my wife telling me I can't, give me the ultimatum that I can't, and vice versa. I'm not gonna do that to them, and I'm not gonna do that to her.
That's a good answer. And I think that what you're saying makes so much sense, because if you just tell your children you can't do that, but you don't tell them why they can't do it, then all of a sudden it's like they don't really understand. And that's what Jehovah's Witnesses do. But the kids, they get these double messages and they don't know why they should be doing that. So then when somebody comes along and challenges their faith, they can't answer it because you didn't teach them to think on their own. And that's really what the issue is. And so I think the way
You're right.
it is awesome. Yeah.
No, you are 100% right. And another thing about when you're married to someone, and again, this may or may not be some information for those who are like just getting involved with somebody, but who has already been involved and they may be having troubles. It's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to convince them otherwise right now. But the important thing is this: a lot of times, like you said, thinking for yourself, they've never thought it out. They've just been fed it. They've been spoon fed it, and they believe it because that's how they've been raised. When it comes down to it, when I was studying originally, I've studied on my own from witnesses directly, and then my own research. I know more about it than my wife. I'll ask my wife certain things about, hey, like I'll have done my own research and I kind of know are the answers. I know the history. I know where those beliefs came from and I know why they're believed today. And I'll ask my wife. And again, it is a setup question. It's not meant to set her up, but I'm asking because I want to see if she knows. So, I'll ask certain questions like, do you know what overlapping generations is about? And she'll just tell me straight up she doesn't know. So there's a lot of things that I know, and then I'll explain it to her, and then she'll take it with a grain of salt, and she'll end up probably looking it up herself. So there's a lot of things that I learn about it that I will prompt my wife. Hey, have you heard of this? Have you heard of this? I read this. I learned this. I watched the JW broadcast, and they were talking about this. And a lot of times she's like, no, I don't know. No, I haven't learned. I know, because it's not something that she's learning in a Watchtower, or she's not learning it on Sunday. She doesn't go to the meetings, and she ends up then going and looking for herself. And a lot of times she won't even come back to me with it because I don't think she can fully explain it in a kind of like a logical way. Because if she could, she'd come back to me and say, yeah, this is the reason why, because she's done that before. Hey, A, B, C, and this is why. And what, like the overlapping generations, it's completely illogical. So, hey, go look it up. Read it for yourself. Come back and tell me what you think about it. I haven't heard it. I haven't heard her explain it to me yet, as of yet.
Your wife would be considered a spiritually weak witness.
Yes, correct.
But she's still trying to hold on to these teachings.
Correct.
So you're having these problems in your marriage with a person that's considered spiritually weak. Then if someone is getting involved with a witness that really is going to the meetings, going out in service, can you imagine what kind of problems they're going to have with their relationship?
Again, and I'm in a lucky situation when it comes to that, because if you have someone that's really hardliner, and that's why I use that word hardliner. My wife's not a hardliner. She'll nod and act like she believes it all and this and that, but when it comes to executing those things in her life, she does not bring herself to that, and she's not a hardliner. And there's people that are, and there are marriages that people have with a witness, and they get counseled. The witness spouse gets counseled. Listen, if you divorce him now, if the end comes and Armageddon comes, he's going to be destroyed. He's not going to be your husband in the new system. So why have him be your husband or your wife now? That's part of that reasoning. Like, because think about it. I'm not going to be a witness. I'm not going to do whatever they are saying that you have to do to be saved in the new system. I'm not part of the 144,000. She's not part of the 144,000. She's cool with that. I'm going to live on in the new system. But according to witness theology, I'm not going to live on in the new system. So she's going to be a single parent in the new system. So that concept right there is used by elders or by those who are held or have the responsibility in the congregation to try to keep their flock in line. They'll tell them, they'll say, listen, he's not going to be here in the new system. So you need to get a husband that's going to be, because what's going to happen? You're not going to be married in the new system. So you're kind of technically not married now. And that's another conundrum, or that's another, I would say, hypocrisy that I noticed about it. Because in witness theology, they keep talking about the world and worldly, and we're not a part of the world and things like that, right? Well, then why the recognition of government marriage? I don't get that. So, my wife and I, we went down to the county office and we got legally married under the laws of a worldly government, and they recognize it as it's like, this is okay. You were married by some worldly government, so we got to acknowledge that. Well, I don't get that. We weren't married in the witness congregation, right? So, but why do you give so much credence and so much? Why do you accept that worldly thing, but then you choose to reject all these other worldly government things? Why is that acceptable and all these other things not? But I always thought that was a hypocrisy, huge hypocrisy, because we went down to the courthouse and got married by a government official. They're not a witness. They're not. I don't even know what religion they are. They're just some government official. That theology is just not consistent, and that's another example of why it's not.
What about your children? How do they feel about you possibly not living in the new system with them?
That talk per se, I don't know if anyone's told them that. I've never had them come to me and ask me that, but I have heard stories through YouTube and stuff, and through YouTube videos and videos like yours. I have heard stories of where children will come to that non-believing spouse and say, Dad, Mom, I don't want Jehovah to destroy you, because they think you're going to be destroyed. And that's a huge, that is some mental abuse to put on your kids. Now, my kids have never said that to me, and I don't believe my wife has ever told them that. And thank God, because, and I don't think anyone's at the congregation has told them that. But when my wife and I have talked before, I have asked her that. I was like, and I told her, I was like, don't ever tell them that. I was like, and I asked her, do you believe that? Do you believe I'm going to get destroyed and I'm not going to be there in the new system with you and the kids? And she never really gave me a direct answer. It was like, in her heart, I don't think she believes it. And that's why she never told me that she believed it. It's not in her heart. And again, her heart is going against these things that they're telling her, But it's, again, witnesses pride themselves on, I remember when I was studying, one of the reasons why, we know we're in God's truth is because look at how we are. Look at how we act. We're Christian-like. Look at how we treat each other. Look how we treat others. Our behavior is indicative of that we are in the truth. This is the truth. And I even asked my wife, why do you think you know the truth? Well, look, and then, she'll tell me that reason. I said, but look at this case. Look at this instance. That's not Christian-like. Look at the sex abuse scandal. Look at this. When I worked in law enforcement, I arrested someone for doing robberies, and he was a witness. It was an individual, him and his wife, they couldn't pay the rent. He lost his job. They were witnesses. They're baptized, both married. Good family though. And he literally, I don't know if there was something, there could have been something mental. I don't know, because I'm not a psychiatrist or anything, but he was basically in no mask, nothing. He was just going in there. He would pass a note to the teller. He'd go to the cash payday loans, your paycheck loan places like Cash America and Amscot, things like that. He'd go and he'd pass a note and say, "Give me all your cash in the drawer. I have a gun in my pocket." And he would just walk out. No mask, no nothing. And he hit like 4 or 5 of them in my jurisdiction and then a neighboring jurisdiction. And evidently, we were just like, okay, we couldn't get any fingerprints. We couldn't get anything on this guy. We just knew what he looked like. So we put his face on the news, and his father-in-law called. And that's how we identified. His father-in-law called and say, "Hey, it's him." So we knew who he was. And his father-in-law got him to come to the house and said, "Look, I called the police. I reported it was you." And because of that, he ended up turning himself in. And so I got called out. He was being held in the neighboring jurisdiction. I went to interview him. And I'm real in depth when I talk to people. So I found out he was a witness. And I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "I'm not a witness, but my wife is." And him and I connected on that level, and he ended up just confessing to all the other stuff. And not a bad guy, just he was in a position where he thought that this was okay to do, and it wasn't. But I use that as an example too. With my wife, I said, "Hey, what's up with this guy?" "Oh, well, but he was probably this or that." There's all the excuses. He probably doesn't go to the meetings, and he probably doesn't do this. I was like, "Well, you don't go to the meetings. Are you gonna rob a freaking Amscot?" No, I don't think so. But he was at first when I started talking to him, he had only confessed to just one, and I needed my cases to get solved. So we started talking about where he goes to meetings, and I think he got worried and scared because I knew some of the same people he knew. It's a small community. In your area, like it's a small community.
I think he also got comfortable with you because
Yeah.
if they know if you got on a common ground with him,
Yeah.
and so witnesses have a tendency to tell anyway,
That's the
turn
trend.
themselves in. So because you guys had a connection with the witnesses, then he was like, he probably just felt comfortable with you. Because if it would have been somebody else, he may not have said nothing else.
I told my wife, I say, I don't care what you call yourself. You can call yourself Almighty. You can call yourself Witness. Human beings are capable of bad things. And I just and I told her, I was like, I would never tell anybody that Catholicism is the truth because look at how they act. It's like it's a self-defeating claim because nobody's perfect, not even Jehovah's Witnesses. There's people that do bad things, even in Jehovah's Witnesses. They may cover it up better and make you think they don't, but don't ever say that. I would never say that. And that's the thing. It's like, so, and I tell her, I was like, okay, so since there was and here's the thing. So since there's a bad person in Jehovah's Witnesses, does that mean that the theology is bad? It might mean, but if you say it doesn't, then everybody else in the world that does something bad and whatever they're affiliated with, you cannot then in turn say that's bad because they're bad. Because that's what witnesses do. That's part of their theology. Hey, look at Catholicism. Catholicism can't be the truth because all these bad Catholics. Look at Protestantism. Look at all these bad Protestants. So Protestantism in turn must be bad. But then when they turn the camera on themselves, well, look at Jehovah's Witnesses. We're good because we do. Well, hold on a second, because I got like 4 or 5 people I just saw do some bad stuff. I guess the only thing I can say is back to one of the original things that I said is, if you're in the beginning stages of a relationship with someone, it's not a solid thing. You haven't made any legal binding commitments. You have to ask yourself those questions. Look 10 years ahead. I know it's a difficult thing to do, but if you plan on having children with somebody, you're gonna have to go through those. You're gonna have those battles. Well, going back to what I was saying before about between hardliners and I'll use the softliners. There's some groups of witnesses that are extremely hardline. Like if you're not baptized, they're not going to interact with you because you're part of the world. You are worldly. Now, my in-laws, I interact with my in-laws. I'm down in Florida, and we're hunkering down for Hurricane Dorian coming at us right now. And my family, I got tons of family that's coming over here to stay here, and even the larger side, like my wife's cousins and stuff, like we're good people, and I know them very well, and I talk to them all the time, and I'll even hang out with them from time to time.
Are they witnesses?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Even one of them is he's like trying to be an elder.
Your wife's not disfellowshipped.
Yeah.
You're not baptized. So they're going to hang out with you because you are a potential recruit.
Oh, okay.
No matter what you say.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
If you were married, like we know people that call us that both husband and wife were witnesses.
I see what you mean.
Husband was an elder servant, whatever. And they ended up in a situation where they woke up and they discovered, oh, this is not the truth. And there's a lot of guys like that. The problem that they're having is their spouses are saying, you know better. You know this is the truth.
Yeah. Your
spouse is not saying that to you because you've never been baptized. So you're still a potential person.
Because I'm not an apostate.
Baptized. Right. Yeah. Right. You're not an apostate. That's exactly right. So that's the difference between a person that's married to a person that's an unbeliever and a person that's married to somebody that used to be a witness.
I asked my wife about if the kids were going to get baptized, and her response to me was that that's not something that she would push upon them. That baptism is an individual decision, and she would never push upon them to be baptized if they didn't want to or they didn't feel like they were ready to be baptized. Now, my daughter, she's 16, and she's told me outright that she doesn't want to be baptized. So, and I told her, I was like, I would never be baptized in anything I didn't believe in either. If I didn't believe in it 100%, I wouldn't do it. Because if you do it, they're going to have your name. You're going to be and if you say, I don't want to believe this anymore, they're going to shun you. They're going to outcast you. If my wife was a hardliner and she was listening to everything they were saying, we wouldn't be together today. We wouldn't. And the only reason why I think we're together is because my wife has put our marriage and our children's lives first. And I say that, I grew up with two parents. I had a 2-parent household. I was very fortunate. My mom passed away when I was 15. So it wasn't like my parents it wasn't a broken family from divorce, which is two totally different things. My mom passed away when I was 15. So I had my dad. My wife, her dad was a deadbeat dad. He was never there. Now she knows who he is, but he was never her father. She never had a relationship like that. And I think that and I know for a fact that they've given her that, hey, it's okay to be a single mom speech. In the new system, he's not going to be there anyway. But she still will not, there's no way that we'll ever get divorced. There's just no way. Because she will never put my kids through that. The importance of my children having 2 parents is just as important to me as it is to her.
Well, Jonathan, I really appreciate you coming on the channel and telling your experience about the challenges being married to a Jehovah's Witness. Hopefully this will help our viewers, those individuals that are contemplating getting into relationships with witnesses, because as you're saying, it's not easy, but you love your family.
Correct.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.